Tabletop will start after the following messages.
Are you looking for something comfortable to wear and keep your brain warm while playing tabletop games? Daily Dose of Yarn makes handmade, customized beanies for all of your style and comfort needs. She can even help you with a custom beanie to represent your favorite character. Check out Daily Dose of Yarn on Instagram and Etsy to order your new favorite beanie today.
Do you like nerdy stuff? Of course you do. Want to see someone make that stuff, but smaller? Sculpting Minis, tabletop terrain, props, puppets, and tutorials, a crafting channel for all things nerdy. Join me over on YouTube at Nich Crafts, where I make stuff about stuff.
Hey, I'm Brando.
And I'm Owen.
And we're the hosts of Banter and Such.
Each week we get together with the most interesting people that we know and talk about the things that we're generally interested in.
Like movies.
TV shows.
Movies.
Nostalgic childhood franchises.
Movies.
Urban legends.
And sometimes movies.
So check out Banter and Such anywhere you get podcasts.
Banter, ampersand, such.
Or Banter and then the word and then such.
Or just Banter and it fills in the rest automatically for you and you just click on it.
Either way, it's called Banter and Such.
Want to get into some BS with us?
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Tabletop, and on this special holiday episode, we are talking about making your own stuff for your table, whether that be gifts for your DM, gifts for your players, things to put on the table, minis, terrain. We talk about it all, and today I sit down with an expert in all of those things, Nich Patzelt, the creator of the YouTube channel Nich Crafts. Oh my god, guys, we had such a good conversation, and it's pretty cool when you have two Nichs in the studio. 100% more Nichs means 100% better content. So I hope you all enjoy this very special episode of Tabletop. Welcome back to Tabletop, everyone. Nich, your host here, and today I have another Nich joining us. Nich Patzelt is a YouTube creator. The channel is Nich Crafts, and he is joining me to talk about making stuff yourself to use at your table or to gift your players or to gift yourself. Nich is an illustrator, painter, crafter, and DM. Nich, welcome to Tabletop. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Of course. We're friends in real life. We know. Went to the same area when we were in school, and we had some of the same friends. We've been running into each other more and more recently, and I've just been super obsessed with your channel. It's like really, really cool. And I've also like sort of fell into over the pandemic. I got really into painting minis and like doing like, building Warhammer stuff, and like then I sort of drifted towards the orc faction because you can literally make anything yourself, and it's just like, yeah, that's the orc. And so I've gotten really deeply into this stuff, and I've been going to your channel to just be like, oh, this is how like a real person, like a real craftsman does this stuff. So it's a pleasure to have you on.
Super excited to be here, and I also like my leaning is so D&D, but the Warhammer stuff is so good that it just like it draws me in over and over again.
The game itself, and I'm probably going to be canceled for saying this, the game itself looks like very dicey and very kind of random to me. Like, oh, there's not a whole lot of strategy here. It kind of seems like you're just rolling a bunch of dice, and if you get a bunch of ones, you lose, kind of thing. But the actual craft of it has gotten me so deep into it that now I have like 3 kill teams, and I've been, playing with my friends, and I have like a bunch of cork board that I've been crumbling up, and I'm like, okay, what artificial snow should I buy to like base this really cool, and like how do I get an ice effect with like epoxy and all that kind of stuff. So I think that it has a lot of vectors of entry into that sort of medium,
Yeah, absolutely. I also love I think D&D also sometimes takes itself too seriously, but there's nothing less serious than like dinosaurs with machine guns and like wizard orcs crafting mech suits, and it's so good.
Yeah, it's so silly in the best way, and I've been really enjoying it. But it's really kind of drifted over into my D&D life and my TTRPG life in general, because I was never somebody who cared about minis or anything until I started to get into like the crafting of my own, and also like the painting and the decorating and the basing and all of that stuff. I realized really helps people invest into the stories, like having your avatar, but having an avatar that you made yourself, or your DM made you, or having a map that somebody painstakingly drew in like tea stain so that it looks like it's like found in the world that you're in, or whatever it is. Like, and even in my like 90s Monster of the Week game, I was really thrilled when like one of my players said, "Oh yeah, I created a book list of like the top sellers in all the decades before, and like 1990 to 1993, because I run a bookshop, and like that's the knowledge I want to have and stuff." So I think that it's like a real way for people to invest, especially people who aren't as into, you know, improv or storytelling or acting, that they can invest themselves in these other ways too, right?
Yeah, for sure. It took me a long time to kind of come around to minis. I had like my cheapness held me back, was the thing. So for, I think, a full solid year, I was using like Staples grid paper, and I drew all of my players' characters, and I put them into clue pieces from a Firefly clue set that I had, and we used those as minis. And I would be like, all right, so plant creatures coming out, and it was just like a succulent and a toy dinosaur. And we played like that for a long, long time. But I found that if you just like put some cereal box together and make like a balcony for a library, your players will lose their minds. It's like the best thing they've ever seen. Like, you don't have to make like spend 3 weeks on a cottage that like they'll use once, but like you put 2 levels in a dungeon on still the same Staples grid paper, and your players are just like, oh my god, look at all these, like,
this is incredible. I can actually put myself on top of the balcony.
Yeah, so I had this little like office in the side of our apartment, and I would just like go in and just like for like 45 minutes before every game just be like, oh no, okay, put it, it's going hot glue everywhere, just burning myself trying to make like cardboard maps for so long. It wasn't until like pandemic when I was like, I've always wanted to make a pirate ship.
Yeah.
That I was like, I'm just gonna do it. And I spent like a full month, every single day I was building this pirate ship. I think I spent over $100 on it, on just supplies, when you could easily buy a mini pirate ship for that much. And it just like drew me into like the like very nitty gritty, like artful crafting of D&D stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that there's sort of a feeling that, especially for players at a table, I don't know, at my table, there's like a lot of generosity and thankfulness to the DM for putting a lot of effort into stuff. And so there's always a sort of vibe of like, how can we like repay them? What can I get them? What's like a fun thing? Usually it's like, you know, snacks or whatever. But if you like make something that you're like, hey, I like this, I really love the game that we're in, I really love what you're doing, I've made my mini like decked out, I've spent like 3 hours trying to make this like a super, you know, great avatar for what I'm gonna put into the game. It just feels like, I know as a DM, I'm always like, if I feel player investment like that, I'm just like, oh god, thank you. I finally, like, I feel like I'm actually doing something rather than just you know, throwing out ideas and being like, does anyone like that? Do you guys like that? Is it just me?
Yeah, I for sure feel that, and I like, that's the common thread of every DM is going home after like a 4-hour session where people were like screaming and laughing, and like you brought out props and stuff, and you go home and just be like, did anyone have fun? Did anyone have fun at all? I spent 12 hours prepping this game, but I don't know. It seemed like they were having fun, but maybe they're just lying because they're my friends.
Yeah, or like all that, like everyone said that they had a great time, but were they lying?
Were they lying? They like immediately are like, so when can we play next? Like, we need to finish this arc, and just like, oh, but they're just being polite.
Yeah, they don't actually care. Yeah, I feel like that is like the perennial like anxious DM kind of mode.
Yeah.
So on your channel, you kind of get into how you can make terrain and you can make maps and you can make props from movies and all that kind of stuff. One of my favorites that you did so far is how to make D&D elemental miniatures out of hot glue. So just like really simple kind of stuff that you can make yourself and put into your game. Especially that we're going into like the holiday season, people are looking for gifts, like maybe trying to save some money and everything. Where would you start when you're trying to gather supplies or gather stuff where you can make something that is high impact and maybe somebody new to the medium can get into and like start creating?
Yeah, I mean, if someone were trying to get into like more refined, kind of more gifty, more like, yeah, more detailed, more fun, I think my initial thought would be to start with Sculpey, polymer clay, because I think there is a childlike wonder and to playing with clay, because I had this exact clay when I was a kid, and I would just like, I would spend all day making little guys, right? And I think if you give anyone clay, especially colored clay, they'll just make a little guy and they'll love it. They'll be so proud of it. And it's just like, a little lumpy dinosaur or whatever. And you can refine those skills to be like really comparable quality to a mini you would get from like Wizards of the Coast or whatever. Yeah. I think Sculpey is the place to start. It's like $20 a block and you can use that for a long time. I think green stuff is a finicky, kind of a nightmare of a material to learn how to use, but if you wanted to customize a mini, I think that is a great place to start for people, is like buy a mini that you like that's close to what you want and add your character's specific hat out of green stuff, right? Just put it in, poke it and prod it for like 2 hours until you have something that you like, and then just let it be. I think green stuff is great for like little specifics and making something your own sort of thing.
Yeah, I actually just recently got into green stuff because I've been really into basing models. Like, I just really love, and I think green stuff is also a really great way to get into that side of things. I think something that you said that got me like, oh my God, that's an incredible idea if you wanted to do a gift sort of thing. If you're like a DM and you have players, or you're a player and want to give a gift to other players or something, if you like say, hey, give me your mini, tell me like a specific thing on it that you like really want, like that it doesn't have currently out of the box. What kind of thing do you want? Do you want like a little spell effect coming out of your staff? Do you want that hat like you mentioned? And then you just play around with some of the green stuff with clay and add that in, or like base it a little bit for them. Man, it just changes the entire... For me, it's like, oh man, this mini is incredible now.
Yeah, I literally just did that. One of my best friends had only gotten the kind of cardboard janky side of my DMing and crafting. Like, played for years and years. First game, still playing together. But got the worst of it and is now seeing like all the stuff I'm making, and it's just like, oh wow, just make this incredible map for all these people, I guess.
Wow, so you didn't care for us at all, I guess.
Yeah. So I went out and bought a mini exactly like I said. That at the time I saw it online, they released this new druid gnome. And I was like, that's so close to what I want for this character. And so I went out and I bought the mini. I turned this kind of like crook's staff to make it a staff of Adder. It's got a like python head on it. Yeah. I carved out the kind of like leaf pattern. I scraped that off on the cloak and made it kind of smooth. I sculpted my own. They've got a rod of the Pact Keeper that's made of like green crystals. So I carved that out of an old Lego lightsaber. I just like carved it in to make it look like green crystal. And then I like sculpted their kind of leather armor and stuff. Smoothed out the hair. I like did all these little tiny things to the base of a mini. And yeah, I mean that's a crazy incredible gift. It did take me 2 days, but yeah. My time is not worth anything. So it was like, so it's such a good gift, and people will absolutely lose their minds, and they keep that on their desk. They don't just use it when playing D&D, which we probably won't play this game in person for another 2 years or whatever, but having this like avatar of your first character, of your like most like dear character, it's huge. And now I've just been doing that for weeks and weeks. I just keep making custom minis of like all my characters, all my partner's characters. I'm obsessed now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, I had no idea what I was doing with green stuff, but I wanted to get... And for the audience who maybe is a little unfamiliar with what we're talking about, green stuff is actually a product name. It's not just something that we're saying like, hey, it's this green stuff I have. It's called Green Stuff. Army Painter makes a pretty good block you can buy. It's an epoxy kind of thing that you like mix with your hands until it turns green, and then you can sculpt out of it. I was using that to make biohazard like ship like bases for some of my like Space Marine kill team. So like basically just like took a X-Acto knife and like cut lanes into it, and then like painted like biohazard stripes and like painted the rest metal and everything like that. But you got like the amount of creativity that people have towards this stuff is, I think, the most exciting thing to me when I look at people who come out with like a green stuff modified miniature with like a new cape or whatever. I'm always like, personally, I'm like, man, I could never figure that out. But like you're saying, like this is not unachievable. So like for someone who feels a little intimidated by customizing a miniature or is a little unsure of where to start with like terrain, like what would you suggest they do? Should they... Obviously, they should go to your channel and watch some videos to get kind of a sense of how it works. But like, how would you like say, okay, you want to do this. You don't feel like you can do it well yet. What is your first step?
Yeah, I think the problem that a lot of people will face, especially with like Warhammer and green stuff, all this like is they're so expensive. One of these Warhammer minis is so expensive, and green stuff is pricey compared to other like clays out there. So like you're using an expensive clay, just a tiny amount, but onto an expensive mini that you could ruin. Like you can absolutely wreck a super good mini.
Yeah.
I think with every craft, with every art form, with every skill, the way to start doing it is to do it. And I think if you kind of start trying to like do as much research as possible, if you try and look into things, if you watch tutorials over and over again, you're going to psych yourself out even more than you started, I think, because you're going to see people doing incredible things. You're going to try and do them like the people do them, and you're not going to get even close. Yeah. But if you do it yourself, you don't really have expectations. You have some expectations, but just, I think, trying to do something like a cloak is huge. I think you can like read how people do it or like watch a tutorial, but don't watch 2. Don't watch 3. I think something like that is a great place to start, because making a cloak out of green stuff is pretty easy. I think the trick to green stuff specifically, this is just an actual tip, is that as soon as you mix it together, it is like super goopy, super sticky. Yeah. Let it sit for 30 minutes or so, and then it becomes a kind of stiff clay that holds its shape really easily. It doesn't stick to your fingers and tools, and you can actually just like work with it properly the way you want to, but you have to be patient with green stuff because you can't.
Oh my god, you just so the other day I was literally like, why are there thumbprints in all of my stuff? Because I did not do that. Yeah, it's I was like literally using like wax paper to try to like, you know, shape it without like getting all of the you know, permanent impressions into it that you don't want. But yeah, that's a way smarter way to go about it.
The other specific of green stuff is and I keep having to remind myself this, is that use water on your tools, because it helps the tools not stick to green stuff. So like and your fingers and stuff too. So it's just like it will kind of repel the clay and it won't get all goopy. But also with green stuff and with everything else, you're gonna mess up, and you can kind of just need to keep pushing it back to where you want it. Just like if you mess up the whole thing, just try again, right? Like you need to like just have the perseverance to just like keep with it and keep trying, especially with this material is like so it's unforgiving, but then it is completely forgiving because you can just start over, right? It'll just pull off by accident, and then you can just put it back on, right? So I think like the place to start with anything, with like making your first mini of a monster, with making anything, have an idea of what you're supposed to do and then just try it, because you will also like look back on your first green stuff mini that you like, you know, you made a bearskin cloak for your favorite character. You're gonna look back and you'll be like, this sucks, and I really like it.
Yeah. that is definitely true. Like when I look at the first model I ever painted, it's definitely that this sucks, but I love it kind of thing, because it definitely, like, my suggestion would be keep whatever you're starting with, keep that as a reference point, so that, you know, 8 months into you like feeling crafty and doing this kind of stuff, you can look back and be like, wow, I sucked and now I'm great.
Yeah, I like my pirate ship is a great example of that, where it was like, this is the first big project I did, the first like proper like time invested terrain that I made, and I was considering making a video where I like fixed it, like resurfaced it, like added all these like techniques that I know now, and then I was just like, wait, this is like, I almost just made a huge mistake and covered up all the work of my first big project that I ever tried to do. And it's just like,
Yeah.
Instead of like hiding it and like redoing it, just keep that first thing you made, right?
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, the place to start is to just start. I think buy the tiniest thing of green stuff that you can buy, and because it'll take you a long way, especially with mini making.
Yeah.
Make yourself a cloak. Try and like, I think a hat's a good way to go. Like, don't try and sculpt a face. Maybe like hair and fur are really good because they're like a little more organic, a little more forgiving. Don't try and sculpt armor on your first try, but you can like cover up insignias and stuff. You can make kind of fur boots around like to make a winter theme, sort of stuff like that. I think just trying stuff out and just seeing how the material works. Use a mini that you hate. Use like a cheap Bones mini. Like, try the material out on something cheaper, I think, than a Warhammer mini, because those things are precious. They're gold.
Yeah, plastic gold. But speaking of that, like, honestly, if you look at the D&D pre-sculpted line, line that Wizards or WizKids or any of those kind of companies put out, they're only like $4.95 or something like that.
They're
and you can
so
buy, like,
cheap.
Yeah, and you can just like go to town trying to figure this stuff out. A little like preface is that when you get any of this stuff, especially the low quality miniatures, they're going to be harder to paint. They're going to be harder to base. They're going to be harder to do all of that stuff because it's not as high quality plastic. But it's definitely a great place to start. You just, spray it down with some primer and then just go to town, practicing. Like you said, I totally agree. I think that's a great way to go.
I also think that mini painting is like probably the best way to start. Instead of like trying to fully customize stuff, try and paint something yourself. It feels really good to just go out and buy like a troll or a young dragon or something and paint that up. You can use craft paint for it. You don't need to buy all the Citadel paints. Like, those things are better quality. Yeah. But also, if you don't know what you're doing with those paints, they're worse than the craft paint sometimes because they're so pigmented, they're so thick. They're like, they're meant to be used in a specific way that I learned. Like,
you gotta thin your paints.
You gotta use a wet palette, and there are tutorials on how to make that yourself. You don't have to buy that. But I think starting with a mini paint is that's probably the best way to start any like kind of crafting. That'll get you hooked. And also, I think when it comes to like minis being cheap, especially those like WizKids, all these like different lines, my like cheap brain was like, okay, I don't want to buy a mini for this dragon fight. I will spend $30 and 20 hours sculpting my own dragon. Took me forever. Those dragon minis cost like $15. They're like $20 maybe. Like, the biggest minis are like, they go up to like 50 or 100, but like a huge mini is still $25, which is so little money considering how much like the equivalent of those materials is going to be more.
Yeah, for real. Like, D&D Wizards of the Coast, I should say, they just released a new kind of sprue line of miniatures, which I would definitely suggest if people are interested in being a little bit more customizable. Like, that's also a really great way to get in. Like, so what a sprue sort of mini is that they come where you then have to clip them out with like clippers essentially, and then you glue them together, and there's like different types of things that you can put on. Like maybe you have a mind flayer and there's like 3 different arms and like different things that he's holding in each of its arms, or maybe it has a different head or a different cloak or whatever, and you can kind of customize yourself. That's also another really great way to get into that like kind of customizable feel, is like get one of the like a sprue line. They're called frameworks from Wizards of the Coast, or any Warhammer model has these things too. There's a bunch of companies that do them. That is a really great way to kind of get your feet wet a little bit of like, okay, I don't like this mold line, I'm gonna file it down a little bit, and then you start getting like into the more granular details of like, okay, this kind of glue doesn't really work so well, so I'm gonna use this glue or whatever. And then by the end you're like, okay, I have to buy a packet of corkboard from the dollar store and completely crumble it up so I can make authentic rocks under its feet and stuff like that.
Yeah, and along that, I mean, my brain never went away from being cheap. So I make most of my minis still. I will buy them every once in a while. I collect garbage off the street to use in my maps, and you can see that in my videos. I every time I see cork on the street, like a wine cork, I just snag that up so that I can do these same things without spending the $2 on corkboard.
If someone was like, okay, as we shift a little bit more into the terrain side for DMs, if you were to say, okay, these are the materials, just start collecting, like you said, from trash cans, from whatever, be the person who's scooping stuff off the street or in the backyard or whatever it is. What are the things that are the most valuable to somebody who wants to make stuff themselves, either terrain or basing or whatever it is?
Yeah, I think the best way to start that stuff, I think for terrain itself, I think using cardboard to start, because a lot of those, a lot of crafting channels will be like, how to start crafting, and it'll be like, spend 40 hours making reversible dungeon tiles, and it's like, or take a little gift box that you got from a candy or whatever, and that's the house, put it on a grid paper, and then you've got interactive map that has layers, and they can jump from building to building, that sort of stuff. I think that's a great place to start. It's just the cheapest, the most bare bones is just start with cardboard boxes and shoe boxes are it's a factory building now, and use your kid imagination to your players will love that. But if you're going into a more refined kind of crafting place, I think dollar store foam core board is the god tier of materials. It's literally
it's in everything.
it's every crafter uses it to make most of their buildings. It's just sturdy but super easy to cut. So if you want to just make some custom buildings, to make some structures, I've used it to make layers of a 4-leveled dungeon map where it's just the boss goes in the back and he's up 20 feet high, and then there's 2 levels on the sides that are 10 feet high with stairs. The stairs are just ramps. You can make that all out of foam core board in 45 minutes. Yeah. That is the best place to get your hands dirty with the cheapest materials possible that are actually good for making stuff. I think I collect garbage off the street to add as little fine details specifically for science fiction stuff Necromunda or Star Wars 5e and all these games that just for little tiny details. I just collect little, if I see a cool little metal bit, I'll put it in my pocket whenever I'm walking around and stuff. I think if you're making terrain, XPS foam, if you can go to a hardware store, just the insulation pink or blue foam, that's what everyone uses to build their levels of terrain, to make hills and mountains, to make your kind of ambushy ravines and stuff. Blue or pink XPS foam is like what everyone uses. You can cut it with a knife. You don't need power tools or anything. You just stack it on top of each other, and then you can like smash it, and it takes texture super well. So you could just carve it with a knife to make hills and mountains, and it looks awesome immediately. You can prime it with like gesso for painting, or a rattle can of like black paint or white paint if it's mountains or whatever. That's the place where like those are the materials sort of thing. But I think it all depends on what you're kind of looking to make, right?
Yeah, like for me, I think that all of that is exactly where my mind goes to. There's some stuff that you can get in like a backyard too, like grab a bunch of sand or gravel or whatever, and then just bake it in the oven and keep a little box of sand, and you can just throw some Elmer's glue on the bottom of whatever you're doing and then pour that sand on it, and hey, you have a beach on your terrain or whatever, or like a gravel pit, or like a blown out building. You have some debris on the ground, and then you use some cork to like break up and crumble and put it on there as well. Like it's actually, there's like a lot of stuff that you can find in your everyday life that will make the little details a lot better. Like we were talking about green stuff. If you ever want to, put a texture on a base or something, you can just grab, a thing of cookies. You find the little part of it with the serial number on it, and you use that to like press into your green stuff, and you have like, a manufacturing style, number on your base. So maybe they're in like a warehouse, or maybe that's like, you do like an Eberron style thing, and that's like the train platform line or something like that. There's like a lot. It's really only limited by your creativity, and I really like that you said that, like candy wrappers and stuff like that, because all of those little plastic tins and like the Oreo cases or whatever, they have crazy good textures on them that you can just like roll onto stuff, and it like that, like it doesn't even have to be green stuff. You can just take like Crayola clay and then just press that stuff on it, and hey, you have like a really killer little part of your like diorama at that point.
Yeah, I think like I continue to use household materials all the time, and I think some of the best like crafters in the world will also use these same techniques, which is like you said, some gravel from outside. I use cat litter for most rock things that I do, and when I don't have like a fine sand, I don't go out and buy it. I just crush the cat litter until it's fine sand. You see all these amazing crafters will just like take Mod Podge is the other like god tier crafting ingredient. You mix baking soda and some cat litter into some Mod Podge, put some brown paint in there. Like you can mix whatever together to make a goopy paste that you put it over a couple like levels of hills, even like straight up not like beveled, just flat pieces of XPS foam that you cut out. You put some of that on, and suddenly you're like, this looks like mud, this looks like rock, this looks like natural, organic kind of, like you can really do the bare minimum and just like grab the stuff that's in your house and just put it all into a paste and throw it onto some, even just a flat piece of like wood or like board or whatever you have lying around. You can just like throw a paste onto it, and then you're like, this looks like mud. It's so easy.
Yeah, one thing also that I would suggest for DMs who are trying to make stuff, what I've been doing recently that I really like and just enjoy doing, and it becomes really useful, is if you buy the bases for miniatures that are larger, so like like a 60 millimeter, like the kind of bigger vehicle miniature bases, you can make set pieces like a huge world tree or a blasted out building or whatever. You put it on that base, and then you have something that you can just kind of like mix and match with whatever setting that you're in. So you're like, oh, like today we're going into a war-torn village. Okay, well, I know I have, that tree that's like toppled over and looks terrible. So like, oh, I'll put that in there. Like this tree got smashed by a ballista or something. And then I have this blasted out like small building wall that is on this thing. And then you can just like take it like miniatures and put them on the table as they find stuff. And I think that that's like very, very easy to do.
Yeah, that is a thing that I have also done recently. Took me way too long to do, but like you will recognize the patterns in your own DMing for what kind of environments you like to use, right? So I think 75 or more % of my encounters take place in a forest or in a temple.
Classics.
The classics. So like I made some boulders out of XPS foam. I made a couple trees with like, instead of like using mini bases, I used washers as the bases. I made the trees out of like sticks and stuff like that. I made some walls out of XPS foam brick. Like, you just cut them into very small little bricks, and then I made some corner pieces of like kind of ruined walls that will look like ruined walls. Or if you want that to be your tavern, put 4 ruined walls and a table in it, and people are like, oh, I get it, it's a whole building. It's just, this is the impression of a building, right? You can go very far with just, for me, just like trees, rocks, and corners, like 90-degree corners of buildings, and that's kind of like all someone would need to get the impression of what you're trying to go for, right?
Yeah, I think that even if you're trying to spice up a battle encounter, throwing those corners out of like, this is half cover or whatever, like you can change how you play and add in so many more mechanics that are interesting. Or you can say like, this is an objective, like, and you put just, you know, a little mini base that has like, you know, a golden sword sticking out of it or whatever. And you're like, okay, we're fighting this enemy, but also run over to that, like somebody has to go over to this sword and like move it around the map or something to do whatever. And then you've made an encounter that your players are going to be like, I remember this forever.
100%. That is almost all of my encounters now. Especially if you get your power gamers in your game, you get a paladin in your party, and suddenly monster fights aren't hard anymore. But it's hard if they also have to protect an NPC from being sacrificed, or if they have to get across the whole map, which is full of monsters, to turn a switch to like turn off the, you know, the portal being summoned from another world. You have to like break the vial. You have to, giving them a second objective is very fun. But I think like, like you said, some 3/4 cover levels is everything in a encounter. If you have a map on your table that has some levels, your players are going to do like such fun, creative stuff. They're going to have so much fun moving around. And again, with like childlike wonder, I think nothing makes adults feel more like children than giving them a bunch of little toys and just letting them like move their own pieces around. When I made my my pirate ship, the sails spin, and then it was suddenly it was just this like, everyone was like, oh, I'm gonna do this like maneuver around, and then like they're just like they're like not even playing the game, we're not even in a session, people are just like they're climbing up the little ropes, and they're imagining the things that they could do. I think that's what kind of crafting for D&D does, is it like gives people a new prompt to be creative with what they're doing, with what their character could do, right?
Oh my God, yeah. Like I think that, so our mutual friend Michael once said on this podcast, don't surprise, impress. Like that is, I think, huge. Like I remember one of my friends brought out this huge foam core thing that they made, and it wasn't on a grid or anything. It was just like, use a tape measure. You have, 30 feet is 3 inches or something. Do it that way. And then at one point someone was like, yeah, I want to like shoot a spell to like destroy this part of the building, and it falls down. And like everyone was like, yeah, well, like just imagine it. And he was like, oh no, you don't have to. And he literally just like split off this part that he had made to be destructible, and then like toppled it over, and we were all like, ah! Like it's like, man, crazy stuff. It's like you're gonna get a reaction like somebody rolled a 20 in like the most intense moment if you just show somebody that they can interact with the board in a real way. So like, build that stuff in, make it so that like, the sails turn, like you said, so that people can be like, I swing around, Pirates of the Caribbean style, or I like throw a grappling hook from one side to the other and I am traversing it, and then you put like a little rope or a string across. It's like, people love that stuff. Yeah,
if you bust out little, you could make little fire like pieces, like you're going to have someone who casts fire on something that will light on fire. If you bust out those pieces, those little fire tokens, people are going to lose their minds. But
Yeah, like if you can even have like one of the things I really want to do but I haven't done yet is like, so if you just get cotton balls and you stretch them out a little bit and put like a little like tea light in there and then you paint them orange or yellow or whatever, you could be like, someone casts fireball and then you put it down and turn on the tea light and then everyone's like, holy shit, like that whole thing is smoking, it just exploded. This whole area is like obscured now because people can't see through the smoke, and it just becomes like a huge, it just makes everyone feel like a little bit more real, which is, I think, what everyone likes.
And I think like some of my favorite sessions, like this, like any sort of prop will like make these more memorable. I had one friend who went out and bought some dry ice, and it had nothing to do with the game. He wasn't the DM. He just brought dry ice to the game, and we just like he put it over our minis and stuff, and we were just playing with it. You have to like constantly like be blowing into it and filling it with water and stuff. It's not like it's not a smoke machine. It's not a good tool for D&D, but it was so fun because we just like had a map with smoke on it, and it was just like one of the best. I also like one of my favorite maps. I think like going back to like it doesn't have to be the most like refined craft for it to have a huge impact. One of my favorite maps I ever made, I started with kind of like a foam board, and I glued a bunch of little boxes, like I said, that were buildings. So I was making a little town with a street in the middle. So it was just like 4 or 5 little like gift boxes on each side. And I had the players going through a dream sequence. They were like within one of the players' dreams. Yeah. And so I busted out this map as they were fighting, and then halfway through the encounter, I turned the map sideways and I stuck it vertically in the table. And so then
Inception style,
they all fell onto like the side of the buildings that were now the tops of buildings, and they had to like jump from building to building instead of using the road. And it became this whole like, you'll fall into the nothing dream state if you fall off this building. And it just like, that's like, it was all just like materials I had lying around, but it's one of my favorite things I've ever made.
Yeah. So as we start coming to a close here, what are 5 like pretty easy things that players or DMs can do as sort of a thing to up the game or to give to a player or a DM to show, I'm invested, or like, hey, thank you for doing this. Like you're a great player. You really make the game whenever we do it. Or, hey, we really appreciate the time you're putting in as a DM. What are some like 5 projects or 5 things that people can really invest into that you think would make a real difference in a game, either virtual or in person, which is more what we're talking about because of the terrain nature of stuff?
Yeah, I would say before I get into any 5 specific, I would say whatever you like to do, make that for the game. You'll find a way to make it work. Like my friend made dolls of everyone's characters, and it's just like, that is not for the game, it's for the people, and like everyone loves that, right? So I think whatever you like to do, if you like to knit or if you like to like carve wood stuff, anything is the right thing, right? Anything you would like to make.
I actually had a friend who basically had these really simple boxes with a little latch on them, and then had access to a laser cutter just because of like a makerspace near them, and like laser engraved the Gilded Canaries, which was like the logo of our little crew, and then just filled it with dice and like a little pin that had like whatever class somebody was. And I still have that on my bookshelf. Like, it's something that means a lot to me, and I'm like, this is the best. This was awesome. So yeah, I totally agree. Like, whatever you feel comfortable doing, or something that you feel kind of unique to yourself, like a skill you have. If you're somebody like, a podcaster, maybe you do like a little audio journal, or like a trailer for the campaign that you're in, or something that you can give to the DM and say like, I just really think that this is a fucking cool story.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to make, which is very specific to me, is I like to write theme songs for my D&D games. So you bust out the theme song after like the recap after every session, or at the beginning of every session, and that's just, it's such a like, it sets the tone immediately. You make it like themed around the vibe of the game. I love that, but that's not something I recommend for everyone unless you make music.
Yeah.
But I would say things that I would recommend to make. First, a letter, handing someone a letter, like do the kind of anyone can do this, like the tea stained, handwritten if you want, but like there are fonts out there, you could print this out, giving any physical object to a player, whether it's like part of a puzzle or if it's just like a token from the mayor or just like your next quest, giving someone something physical, they'll lose it. They'll lose their minds and they'll keep that forever. But like giving them a physical thing, I think a letter is like the easiest, like most effective way to do that for anyone.
That's so smart. And also I think such a good way. Like I run a lot of mysteries in my campaigns, like a lot of like, okay, you have to figure out what's happening here. Like I'm not telling you. And it also allows people to hold on to important information and be like, this is important. I can refer back to this thing because the DM literally gave me this information in a letter format. So I probably have to know what's inside of it, kind of thing.
Yeah. I think harking back to kind of what we've talked about, I think painting a mini for players is huge. And I think, if you're playing D&D, something is probably close enough. I think people will get hung up on like it's not exactly right, but like whether your like paladin uses a greatsword or a sword and shield, like if you paint it in kind of their color scheme the way they've talked about, people are gonna love that. And there's always something so close. You can customize if you want, but anything that you can do, putting a mini on a table, having someone, even if you're not doing a fight that session, if someone has a little token of themselves in front of their like character sheet, they're gonna like be having a more fun time having a little guy.
I think that that's all 100% true. I also think that a really great thing you can do as a DM is like give either the table, like something to have out whenever you're playing, like make a map, something that they can refer to, something that they can hold and like pass around. If like, I think we're here right now, we need to go over here. The legend says like that's a 50 miles, but also there's this weird little lump, like a big skull and crossbones in between those 2 points. I wonder what that is.
Yeah, and there are a million map makers out there too, like apps for making those things, or just go to a place in the world and trace it. And that like that's your. I have a world in my game where the landscape of the world is Alaska inversed.
I do the same thing. One of the greatest tools that people don't use enough, I think, is if you go to Google Maps and you go like my Google Maps into Google, it will pull up a Google Maps where you can go to any part of the world. You can zoom in and it'll show you like a topographical type map, and it'll have all the little things, but you can then put different markers down as like different things. And all of my games that I've ever played with like a somewhat modern setting, I just use all of the road names that are already there, and then I just, put all of these little points of interest in there as well. It's amazing.
Yeah. For another craft, I would say a super fun one that everyone will also just have a great time with, making wands.
Yeah.
Just get some sticks. You can add a crystal to the back of a stick and people will have a great time. Add some leather, like wrap or like fake leather wrap to a stick. Whatever you feel like doing to it, like putting something on the end, putting something like just like people who have a wand feel powerful, and I feel like that's a really fun thing to do.
This is like, man, there's so much stuff now that I want to do for my friends. Like one of our co-hosts on the podcast, Daniel, a lot of his characters get in trouble with authority figures quite often. And I kind of just want to, like there's a Waterdeep's campaign that we're in, and I just want to put on like, make a little rap sheet for, like have Valen be like person of interest, all of the different times that we've had to talk to him kind of thing, and put like, just give that to him as like a little gift. I think that would be so fun. I
love that. I would also like, you could turn it into like a mechanic, almost One Piece style, as like Luffy goes through his adventures, his bounty goes up, right?
Yeah,
so you just go from town to town, and it's just like wanted, like 10,000 gold, and then like a few levels later, it's like 25,000 gold, wanted, same guy, right?
Yeah, and you can like, even if you're not an artist or anything, you can do like a bad sketch and like have like a giant nose or a weird chin or something and be like, I guess that's why he hasn't been caught yet. It's like this, this illustration of him that everyone's using to try to find this person is just like bad enough that he's been able to skirt by.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, that's a very good one. I think one of the things that my friends and I made were dice boxes. I think that's a huge fun craft for anyone. We did it. We did the hollowing out a book old school craft where you just open up your book, you glue the pages down, and now it's just this hollowed out section for your dice. You can roll in or keep them.
And honestly, it is so easy to do that. You just take a book that you like or a book that you don't, and you take an X-Acto knife and you just cut a square out of most of the pages, glue the sides, and then you open and close it, and you have a little dice box. That's actually a really good idea.
It's huge. We do a yearly D&D craft for Christmas, so we've done lots of these little ones where we made ornaments and stuff. But I think those are very easy for any player, and customized the dice box to someone's character. You can either just go to Michael's or any craft store and buy a wooden box. You can most people don't have a wood in heated wooden carver thing, but if you do that, that's so fun. I did that for my DM screen.
I mean, even if you don't have that, if you just take a piece of paper and you make your own little stencil, and then you just get a rattle can of paint and you can spray designs on it or whatever, and then it's it's yours. So
you can use Mod Podge to transfer printed things onto wood and stuff. There's a million ways to do customize someone's thing. Just as there are also a million logos that you can steal from artists online, and they'll never know because it's your home game. I've had people ask can I use your character art for my home game? It's you didn't have to ask, I'm not gonna know about it.
Yeah, I mean, that is another great segue into it. If you were going to spend money, what is a great place to spend it? I know for me, a great place to spend it, and one that I highly recommend, is that you have commissions that you can get people to do character art. You're a painter, an illustrator. You do really great work on your Twitter at Nich Patzelt. But you have and Nich is how it's spelled, N-I-C-H. So for folks who wondered why I didn't say Nick, but you can just have. We've had this thing for a while in my game where we have a Christmas sort of January, we all get together in person. We play this 2-day long session kind of thing. And the winner of the session, because it's sort of PvP based, gets a piece of character art or whatever. So you can do that kind of stuff where buying somebody a piece of character art either on Etsy or whatever is huge. So what are some paid for opportunities that you would suggest that maybe people don't know?
Yeah, I mean, character art is huge. For me, that would be the first art thing I ever did for D&D. I mean, my crossover between art and D&D is a perfect circle, because everything is just as soon as I made a character, I drew it, and then I get to my games and I drew everyone else's characters. Some people paid me for it and some people didn't, and I think having an illustration specifically of your character and everything about them is huge. Bigger the mini, unless you're spending what I spend on time making them customizable, probably will get close, but it's more of an avatar, an idea. It's a chibi version almost.
Yeah.
But having character art so that everyone can see what you see a little bit, and I think that's huge. I have never heard of anyone commissioning a theme song, but I think it's my favorite thing in the world, and I love that. I think any I think buying a dragon, buy your DM something, give them a gift, give them a beholder. Every DM wants to have a beholder mini in their collection.
And if you're oh man, but this is just something out of box, I don't know if they already have one or whatever, just go to Etsy or go to Fiverr, and you can get either STL files if you want to 3D print your own custom mini. You can get people to model specific things for you, or you can even like on Etsy just buy, you know, weapon effects or spell effects or like gun blast effects or whatever. Just like buy, you know, a box of those and then like customize, trick out your table's models with them, and like everyone's gonna be super happy. So yeah, I think that you're totally right that you don't have to do anything crazy, and there's a lot of unique stuff on Etsy and other kind of like more niche marketplaces that have a more unique feel to them, I guess.
yeah. I think like the minis that you can get from Etsy are insane. Like they are so detailed and so like outlandish because they don't have to worry as much about this like you know, profits and maximizing like the materials versus the profits. And like 3D printing changed the game, but yeah, I think like character art is like would be my highest recommendation because it really is so fun, and I've done so much for people like their own characters or characters for their like books or publications or whatever. People love it. Like they love to see their characters, and that's like, it's such a joy because I love illustrating fantasy characters. That's a dream to work on too. Like I love just it feels so natural to me to like do that, but then when people get to see their characters, they love that shit. But yeah, I would say make or buy anything for your DMs, I think.
I think that is the true message to take out of this is like what people I think respond to more is like the wonder of being able to interface with their game more cleanly, or from a DM side that people give a shit about what you're doing. So like any sort of investment into that from a player as a DM, I'm like, oh my God, they're my favorite player ever. Like they actually care. They want to be a part of this. And as a player, if I, you know, bring that stuff to the table, it's so that like me and my friends who are giving me this like real great part of my life, this like social connection, have a way to like, you know, further connect each other to what we're doing through like, hey, these are all custom for us and it's like basically showing love. Like I love that we do this together.
Yeah, I think like there's also just a bunch of D&D merch, or go to a craft fair. My friend just bought like a potion wrapped in leather, like something just like a skull, something like just to put like around a flagon for your DM or like for the player, like just different like cups or props or candles, or like there are like D&D scented candles that have like forest smells or like sulfur smells, or like anything to like just enhance the table or the atmosphere of the room you're in, I think is huge too. Just like any sort of fantasy prop, or if you're like feeling lavish and you have the money to spend, everyone wants a sword.
I think that's a great place to start closing out. Everyone wants a sword. I think that is definitely true. If you're like, you know, I know this person, it like fucking loves this like mystical sword in their campaign, get them a sword. It's the best.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what sword. Any sword is good.
Any sword. Even if it's a little miniature sword, I know I'd be like, this is the coolest thing ever. So thank you so much, Nick, for coming on. This was such a good conversation. I love talking about right now my two favorite things, which is TTRPGs and crafting. Yeah. It's like such a, you know, it brings me such joy in my life. But where can people find you? We've already talked about your YouTube channel a little bit. Can you talk a little bit more about what that channel does, how often you upload, what your plans are for that?
Yeah, I mean, my YouTube channel is Niche Crafts, Nichecrafts. I don't know why I tried to spell.
Gotcha.
Good at making stuff. I'm not good at spelling. It is kind of a nerdy collection of various crafts, mostly D&D themed, maps and minis, all sorts of different things, some Star Wars or Zelda, or all kinds of nerdy themes around them as well. It's my favorite thing in the world. This channel is my whole being in a project. It is stupid. There's music, there's skits, and it's just a whole goofy little channel for watching how to make stuff and having a good time.
Dear listener, the most recent one that I saw was making the flamethrower and chest burster from Alien. So if you're like into it isn't just TTRPG stuff. If you're like, I need a good costume, like head on over. It's really cool. You do some really fun stuff on there, and it's in a very digestible, like you said, fun kind of way of presenting it too.
I hate gatekeeping, and I feel like this is a channel for anyone to enjoy.
Yeah.
I upload about once a month. That's generous. I'm going to upload more. Just about to hit 1,000 subscribers, which is very fun. This channel is everything, and you should watch that. You can follow me on Twitter at NichPatzelt or on Instagram at the same.
All of these will be in the show notes as well for everybody who's interested. You can just go down and click the links. And if you're interested in getting a commission, which I definitely would suggest, even if you go take a look at some of the art on Nick's page, it's really detailed. It's not just like a character standing in front of like a blank background. Like he'll do a full background, it's almost like oil painty style, like kind of watercolory fantasy art. It's really, really cool. So take a look at that too.
Thank you. Yeah. You can find me basically everywhere, and but go to YouTube. That's everywhere. The one.
Well, thank you so much, Nick. It's been a blast. I'm sure that we're going to have you on again sometime because we didn't even really get into your like DM philosophy, which I am super interested in because just from our talk now, I feel like we have a lot of alignment on, battle mechanics and, whimsy, bringing that stuff into the game. We should definitely do another episode in the future. But thanks so much, and I hope you have a great holiday season.
You too. Thank you. I will be back.
See ya.
Bye.
Thank you all for listening to another episode of Tabletop. My name is Nich Patzelt. I'm the host here. If you'd like to get in touch with any of us, including me, head to our website, tabletoppod.com. We have a contact form there that goes straight to our personal emails. And everyone, if you could do me a huge favor, if you enjoyed the episode, tell some folks. Go down into your podcast app and write a quick review. I will read any new review that comes in the new year. I promise. Feel free to use that for good or for evil. You can write literally anything, and I will just be forced to read it. So feel free to do that now. If you would also like to share the episode with some of your friends, it is the best way for the podcast to gain new community members. And if you are interested in supporting the show, we do have a Patreon. We have a Discord. All of these things are at our website. Again, that is tabletopod.com. All right, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful week.